Well, welcome. It's hard to close a show like tonight. We've heard from a lot of really inspiring and thought-provoking speakers, and I keep thinking about the thoughts they planted and new ideas. I'm going to struggle to stick to some old ideas, but I would consider them revolutionary ideas. Revolutionary in the sense of what the Founding Fathers meant when they related to the root of that term, revolve. To the Founding Fathers, what they called revolutions weren't something brand new, radical, and different. They were indeed radical, but it was a revolution, a return to the ideas developed in the Magna Carta hundreds of years before. I'm going to ask all of you to partake with me in a profound revolution, something so radical that most of our organized religions still protest against it. Whether you're Islamic or Christian, you're opposed to it. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Regardless of your politic, Democrats and Republicans, we've embraced a rejection of one of the most profound ideas our Founding Fathers held sacred, and that was something we called capitalism. Capitalism is largely restricted in America. The 95% can't partake in it. It's so dangerous. It is so threatening that we prohibit it with regulations and bureaucratic institutions and rules and registration processes that make it almost impossible for the startup today to thrive. If you talk to people today, they're going to tell you that the economic recovery we're in the midst of is something different than what we've ever seen before. We've made it the Great Recession. The only downturn we've seen equivalent was the Great Depression. And I'm going to argue that what is different today is a direct result of the collapse of our financial system. And when you're in the immediacy of these events, we often miss them. They're so profound that we ignore the fact that the majority of Americans lost a third of their wealth in the last 5 years. A third. Retirement savings have been wiped out for an entire generation. The radicalism I'm talking about is the freedom to solicit investment in capital. Isn't that the founding principle of capitalism? That you can own the means of production? But if most of you want to go start a business today, you can't simply solicit investment from me. You can't solicit without registering with the state, without going through profoundly complex rules, without going through legal overhead. And so I'm going to talk a lot about that. I want to drill down into the details of what that revolution is looking like, because we're in the midst of it. And it's happening all around us. And there are tremendous casualties, but there are tremendous upside. This is the creative destruction that economists speak of. And Occupy Wall Street was trivial. Was that revolutionary? No, that was a distraction. The frontal attack on Wall Street is coming by 95% of Americans who are worried about their savings and their retirements and their future. One of the regulations you have, if you want to set aside tax-exempt savings for your retirement, is that you have to have a custodian take care of that money. You have to register that money. About 2 months ago, I was reading a fascinating news article in Fortune magazine, and it used this number 155,000. And I want to tell you about 255,000 I read about in the exact same day, and I thought that was more than a coincidence. It must have been some hidden meaning. The median American family, if they have 2 wage earners putting money into a 401k for their retirement, and that represents $3 trillion of wealth in the United States, one of the largest forms of retirement. $3 trillion is a lot of money. I'll talk about angels and stuff in a minute, but $3 trillion in 401ks. But the average American couple, the median, I'm a statistician, I pay attention to the difference between averages. The median couple spends $155,000 over their lifetime in administrative fees and management fees for their 401k. And on average, every managed fund, on average, underperforms the index of the industry's targets. Energy funds underperform indexes. Broad stocks underperform the S&P 500. Bond funds underperform the indexes. So not only are you giving up about 30% of your retirement to required, mandated administrative overhead, now that's what we're going to revolt about to Wall Street. That's the real burden that we're talking about changing. So that was 155. And to me, it's symbolic of the real burden we have, that you cannot take your retirement savings and invest it in a startup of your neighbors or your cousins without going through exhausting and really economically prohibiting regulations. Costs about $50,000 to do a trivial registration. I was involved in taking 2 companies public, and at the time we thought $250,000 was getting out really, really, really cheap. In today's numbers, it's over $1 million. So, let me tell you about the other 155,000, because there is light out there. The same day I read an article about edX. Do all of you know what edX is? Harvard and MIT are part of an educational initiative to give global education. University of Michigan's involved with a program with Stanford and some of the schools. And there's several clusters doing this. edX, though, at the beginning of this spring semester, launched an electronics course, the MIT Introduction to Electronics, which I'll tell you is a very rigorous course, and it's something that if you're in CS, computer science or electrical engineering, it's pretty much a mandatory course, very difficult, but it's probably one of the world's best. They offered the course video online to anybody in the world who wanted to attend, at no cost. They offered all the books in PDF form. They organized study groups around the world by culture, by nationality, by time of day availability, by background and interest. 155,000 students enrolled in that class. That to me is a profound 155,000. That's where we should be taking our money and investing. We should be talking to the professors at Western University and say, hey, you got a good idea. Can I chip in? I want to be part of that idea. Can I fund that? But you know what? If a professor from Western University stood up here and solicited your investments, he'd be creating some tremendous liabilities for himself because you're not allowed to be solicited. That is a public offering of a security. So here's what's going on. We need startups to fuel the economic dream. The wellspring of American jobs, of wealth creation, and of technology come from startup businesses. One example is jobs. Why do we have a jobless recovery? Because new startups stopped in 2008. They stopped because the money that they got came from what we called family, friends, and fools. That's your first round seed capital. And where did that seed capital come? You can't touch your 401k. That's got a custodian and a guardian, and it has to be administered on Wall Street. There are actually ways to self-administer, and you should be thinking about that. Your IRA is locked the same way. So where did you go to get your money? Mortgages, home equity. Startups were funded by family, friends, and fools who took secondary loans on their homes, or they used that to guarantee loans. And that stopped in 08, and new jobs and new startups stopped in 08. The blue bar is total job creation in the United States for the last 30 years. The red is what happened in each of those years if you take startups out of the equation. For the last 25 years, America has shed jobs, except for startups recreating them. And that's phenomenal. When GM gets rid of jobs, it means cheaper cars because our labor force is more productive. But it doesn't work if we don't recreate new jobs. For 30 years, you can see the impact, negative numbers. But think about what's going on in the real world immediately to this current recession. And it shocks me how we missed this. In 2002, America lost more jobs than it did in 2008 at the peak of the Great Recession. Now, how could that be? I don't remember a Great Recession in 2002. We lost more jobs in 2002 than we did in 2008. We did, but in 2002, we had this blue line. See this red line? The blue is the unemployment. The red are new job creation. In 2002, we were recreating jobs every day, thousands of them. We have not lost our entrepreneurs. Every year I see over 100 qualified businesses working hard. We have not lost our inventors. You heard about what we're talking about with cancer therapies? You can hear about what we're doing with educational technologies. Of the 155,000 students that took that course online, only 7,500 took all the exams and final and completed the course. And a lot of people say that's disappointing. That has spawned discussions all over the world about how to improve that. But the real underlying nice, rosy lesson is that that's 40 years of enrollment in that course. You know, that's not a bad, what a place to be investing. What a place to be creating new jobs. But this is what's happened to new company startups. This number was 536. This has actually continued to plummet. So we haven't seen a recovery. This was at 550 in 94. Romney referenced in his debate that we haven't seen new job, we haven't seen company creations that have been declining for 30 years. The only reason why we say 30 is we don't have earlier history, but it's worse than it's ever been in the recorded data we have available. So this is the crises America faces. This is what net jobs in total businesses. This was 09. In 2010, Michigan led the nation in the loss of business. And that's the net of new minus the loss of existing. And so we lost, I think, I forget the number, 5,000 net. So no new creation of businesses. And the question is why? This is the end of the American dream. We cannot have a job-creating recovery if we don't have startups. Big businesses destroy jobs. I'm on the board of a large $500 million ag tech company. And we're really proud when we can deploy $30 million, and we pay for that by eliminating jobs. But that makes the food you eat cheaper. It's not the problem of eliminating jobs and having high tech and high efficiency. It's the loss of creating new jobs. And we've lost it because of the failure of our financial system. Now, in the classic world, you guys would save, and remember A Wonderful World? We had a community banker whose job was to take the money you set aside and put it to productive use. Our banks today make more money trading financial instruments than they do taking savings and putting it to productive use. And I want to talk about why that is. Alan Greenspan said you don't need to worry about regulating investments because of counterparties. Did you ever wonder who a counterparty was? You ever hear that, counterparties? The counterparties. We don't have to worry about investments because they'll be taken care of by the counterparties. And it's a logical argument. A counterparty is the other side of a deal. Now, what venture capitalist is going to invest in a startup company if he thinks it's going to fail? What banker would invest in a mortgage loan if he thought they weren't going to get repaid? This has a lot to do with opium. No, really, I mean, all of Wall Street is driven by opium. That's OPM. Other people's money. No skin in the game. Angels, we're going to find out, are different. The only people we dare to let play in this dangerous world of dealing with their own money are angels, so I'll talk about that. But what killed Wall Street was we created these profit centers. Wall Street created all these intermediaries, so our mortgages were sold by people with no skin in the game. They sold a mortgage, they signed your mortgage, and they resold it. If you want to see financial reform, I can write it on one page. You can't do a financial transaction without skin in the game. You can't lend money unless you're at risk. Did you know it's illegal for your broker to, I went to my broker and said, I only want to pay you on the gain. That's how I play. If I manage a venture pool and we get you guys in on the deal, until all the investors are repaid 100%, the general partners don't get anything. We only get some of the upside if there is an upside. Why can't we well, that compromises the independent integrity of your dealer, your broker. They get paid anyway, so now they don't have to be corrupt and try to make money. I'm lost there, but so what constitutes a permissible transaction in America? Angels exist. I run and we direct one of the largest angel investment networks in the state, so I'm going to talk to you a lot about what that is. It's a unique form of venture capital, and today it's probably the most active and important form we have to fund startups. But first of all, permissible transactions. Religion, for thousands of years. Remember, Jesus knocked over the money changers' tables. You've all heard those stories. Islam prohibits usury. Money on money is evil and dangerous. Money on liquor, you can do that. Money at the casino, you can do that. You can go on that shopping television thing. Talk about exploitive. Do you see what people buy on that shopping channel? That is pure exploitation. When you get that crap, it's not like what they showed you. That's pure exploitive, but you're free to do that. It's just not money on money. If I give you back money for your money, there must have been something evil. It's gaming. You can't do that. Or it's an insurance. It's a promise of the future. You can't do that. Gaming. I'm on the board of the Saginaw Public School Foundation. What a noble purpose, I think. We have an alumni football game. The two high schools play each other, and we get the alumni back, and they help support the school system. We want to sell 50-50 tickets, and we do it every year. We cannot sell 50-50 tickets at our high school game without getting a numeric license number from the state. We have to apply months ahead to get it. Come on. Who are we protecting? You think we're selling it to the 5-year-olds and taking their lollipop money? Or what do we call those? They weren't pops, they were dum-dums. Debt and equity is considered a transaction that is guilty under the federal laws. If I want your savings as an investment in my startup, whether it's debt or equity, whether it's a loan that I'm going to repay or whether it's selling shares of my company, is a restricted transaction. And the only way around doing all of the state and federal regulations to say that you're not going to hurt somebody, you can buy cars and text while you're driving. You can spend money any way you want, except on capital. Isn't that bizarre? I mean, capitalism in America? Well, for the angels, I'll talk about that. We get to play, but you don't. Transactions are considered public issuances that we have to protect people from, and so we have to go through complex, costly, time-delaying, and deadly registration processes of that security unless we find an exemption. And there are certain exemptions in the Security and Exchange Commission's Acts from 1933, 1934 vintage stuff. That's when we were thinking up these protections. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have information available, but we had to protect you from these exploits. So the most important exemption is this thing called Regulation D. And Regulation D says, hey, if you're rich, you're on your own. You must be a savvy investor, you must be a sophisticated financier. You might have been an athlete, you might have been a rock star, you might have inherited your money, or you might have been just dumb lucky. But we assume if you got $1 million, you're smart enough to play. So we'll exempt you from federal regulations. And by being exempt from federal regulations, if you use a federal exemption, that usurps state law, and so you're exempt from all state regulations. So if you're rich, you get to play. So angel investors have a net worth of over $1 million. Well, so I think angels are the cutting edge, but what is an angel investor? An individual with over $1 million of net worth, excluding their principal residence, which is negative for most of us anyway. So, so $1 million in net worth, or an income of $200,000 for the last 2 years, or $300,000 if you want to do investments as a couple, jointly. So $1 million or in income or an asset test, and then you're exempt from these rules. Except you as entrepreneurs can't solicit us, because that still might be sort of cynical or dirty or some evil. It's capitalism, remember? So what has happened in this continuum of businesses growth? The early stage companies got money from what we called the 3 Fs, family, friends, and fools. They got money out of mortgages and home equity, and that's gone, and so that stopped the wellspring. That stopped these early stage. Angels are starting to fill this in, but the total investment of angels in the nation last year, organized angels invested about $24 billion. That might seem like a lot, but it funded 60,000 startups, on average $400,000 per startup. So that's roughly the numbers angels did. That's trivial. You have $3 trillion in 401k money. 1/2 of 1% of that is more than doubling all the angel investment in the country. So there is wealth out there, but can we safely free it up? Or will these things wreck and ruin and steal our savings? Well, I would argue that we would be better off disintermediating Wall Street than leaving your money there. I can tell you on average you're going to lose 30% just in fees. I can tell you on average, this history shows us that you're going to underperform the indexes. And what's happened with this banking? Why am I saying get them out of the middle, get them out of your pocketbooks? They don't bank anymore. I was involved after teaching at Penn with some finance students that put together one of the first conferences on derivatives in history. And they didn't call them derivatives, we called them synthetics. They were fake instruments. They were fake then, they're fake today. But the early instruments did serve some purposes. The Italian bank was privatizing. They had all this real estate that a lot of people said, yeah, we'd like to borrow or lend against that real estate, but we don't want the risk of the lira devaluing. And so they separated and they created two contracts. But you know what? I could explain that to you. There's a contract for the lira, the currency change in value, and so I could look just at the risk in investing in the property. That's a manageable investment. The derivatives we're talking about today, the most senior financial people in the banks don't know what they are. And they don't understand them. And our very best bankers in the world can't keep up with them. And if you cut them off, you know what they say will happen? They say they'll all go to work in Hong Kong and in Japan and in the rest of the world. And I say, whoa, wouldn't they give us a competitive advantage? Sorry. I don't need to drill on this anymore. The problem is Wall Street can't solve our needs. We need community banking, we need community investing. Why? Because the community is the source of knowledge. It mitigates the risk. It knows the executive team. If I'm worried about the CEO of one of my portfolio companies, I see him in Myers at the grocery store, and I can say, what's going on? Angel investing is private equity. It's part of this venture capital continuum, but it's not enough. And so the revolution I'm asking you to join in is to rebirth capitalism in America and free individuals to invest in private businesses and free our companies to solicit those investments. The Jobs Act is the first step in that reform, which was passed bipartisan by a large majority of both parties. The Job Act allows us for the first time to begin to openly solicit investments again. And so a cancer treatment out of Wayne State could run an ad in the Wayne State Alumni Journal. And as long as the investors are angels, accredited investors exempt from SEC oversight, we could start taking their money. But that's the tip of the iceberg. There's $3 trillion in IRAs, more than that. There's $3 trillion in 401ks. There's American wealth that needs to be put back into productive use, not exchanged on trading desks. Thank you very much.